up your day. Oink, oink, oink. Smart little bites that brighten your way. You're listening to Food for Thought Radio here at FFTradio.com.
Oh, it started way too early.
Thought Radio
Why has it done
here
that?
at FFTradio.com. Wake up your mind, fill up your day.
Yeah. Okay.
Smart little bites that brighten your way. You're listening to Food for Thought Radio. Here at FFTradio.com. Cluck, moo, oink.
Good evening, everybody. It's everybody's favourite week or weekday evening time again. This is Food for Thought Radio. I'm your host, Gary Glendale, and I'm joined in the studio by producer Paul. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm just producing away like Billy-O. Gary, just having a great time with things. Yeah, good to be with you again, mate.
Excellent. Well, this is the farmers and finance segment on Food for Thought Radio. So we are going to be talking money, dosh, dollar, cash, moolah, whatever you want to call it, and we are going to be defining the difference between money and currency. That's it, because currency is not moolah, currency is not dosh, currency is not cash, currency doesn't have any value. Currency is a fugazi, a fraud, and it's inflation that causes all the world's financial problems. Literally, inflation is what pits people off against each other. Because if you are holding an economically toxic asset that's going down in value, then you are sinking. Literally like a sinking ship. So therefore, you're going to cut corners. You're going to do whatever you need to do to survive. You're going to try and rip people off. You're going to try and charge them higher prices. Not because you want to, because the higher the price is, the harder it is to sell. What you really want is a product that you keep lowering the prices of, and then you get repeat buyers and even more sellers. That's what you really want. So therefore, you would do that if you were competing for an asset that was increasing in value. Because if that increases in value, all you've got to do is drop your prices a little bit, and then you get it back over time. Especially if that asset is in high demand. So really, what you want is an asset that actually increases in value, so that you have an incentive to reduce your prices. And so long as you're selling something that is actually useful and valuable to someone, in other words, you're not going to be selling them some shit. And also, you don't need to you don't have to have built-in obsolescence anymore in a product, because if you're selling it for an asset that's increasing in value, you don't need repeat purchases. So therefore, you can actually come up with a one-hit wonder. You can actually make a machine that doesn't need a subscription, and your business can still survive because the asset is going up in value rather than you needing repeat custom. And that's the world that we should be living in. But purposely, it's been designed to be inflationary at an extensively accelerating rate, so that we have a religious extremist group who can fulfill their prophecy of installing a totalitarian one world government and stealing all the assets off everybody, so that all the world's resources ends up in their hands. So the only way we're going to get out of that, as Friedrich Hayek said, is to introduce the money and take it out of the hands of government and out of private hands in some sly roundabout way that they cannot stop. And that is what we're here to do. And the most important people who need to know this information are the farmers. Because food security is absolutely essential for the survival of a sovereign nation and its people. Because you don't bite the hand that feeds you. So if we're being fed, then we are in an extremely vulnerable position. And the only way we can get out of this is by using a true money. And if everybody knows what money is, well, money has to be a commodity. So if you want to know what the most valuable money is going to be, all you have to do is commoditize the most useful resource. And in today's day and age, the most useful resource is digital data. So if you can make data valuable, it means that you can send that value as fast and as efficient as light energy, because that's what it is. There is nothing more efficient than the resource of light that we can actually harness and turn into a commodity at the moment. So although everybody is getting their knickers in a twist about this digital age with Catherine Austin Fitts constantly preaching about how they're building this digital concentration camp, well, they are. But they are building a digital concentration camp, whereas the way we escape from that is by using a commoditized digital network that they do not own and control. One where we own and control our own data and where we use it as our own financial system. And therefore, they've got a problem on their hands, because if they're building a digital concentration camp using the economy that they've created that is purposely economically toxic, people will soon start to flee, because nobody wants to be on a sinking ship. They want to be on a ship that's buoyant. They want to be on a ship that floats. They want to be on a ship that's going to increase its capacity to have more society on board of it. You don't want to be on a shrinking ship, because eventually it will shrink and it won't be able to fit you on. So what we want is an expanding, floating ship that we can all live on peacefully and in harmony, where we're working for the benefit of our common man rather than being pitted off against one another. And so the only way we can do that is if we revert back to a true money, a commoditized bit of data that we send around from one another in exchange for other people's unique goods and services, because it's access to people's unique goods and services that actually raises the quality of life. It's not about the amount of wealth in circulation. It's about the access to capital resources. Now, the story that outlines this is the one of Francisco Pizarro in the 1500s, when he went over to South America and engaged in the Battle of Cacamara and enslaved all the Incas and thought he was going to be rich because he was using them to mine all the gold and silver from El Dorado and take it back to Spain, thinking that he and his crew and Spain were going to be incredibly rich, which they were for a short period of time. But all that happened was they just simply brought an excessive amount of gold and silver and introduced it into an economy that had a fixed number of goods and services. So all that happened was that Spain experienced rampant inflation and economic collapse, even though they had all this gold and silver. So that wasn't the problem. The problem was the economy. And this is why London became a nation of shopkeepers. And London ended up becoming the richest city on earth, because we had lots of competing shopkeepers with access to their own goods and services and resources that they were providing to us in order to increase our quality of life. So what we actually need is a money that is competed for that will allow small businesses to survive and thrive, because it's choice that gives us freedom. If we have no choice, we have no freedom. So what is it we can actually introduce that will allow small businesses to survive and thrive? Well, we're going to have to start using an economically positive asset as a medium of exchange, which will soon become money. And this is what the farmers need to use. So we are hoping that they're going to listen to this show, aren't we, Paul?
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Slowly but surely, the farmers of England are rousing from their slumbers and are listening to the show. I mean, there's so much to it. There is, I'm pondering on this now more and more. There's more and more minutes every day of my brain are getting devoted into this area, which is cool, and I'm really enjoying all that. I just wish I had a 72-hour day. If anybody's got one out there, please give us a call, will you, and let me know, because I could really do with one.
Well, I still need my 8 hours sleep, mate. I don't think I'll be able to cope with a 72-hour day.
No, I've been doing too much sleep. Sleeping. Wow. I mean, I've been hitting the hay about 1 o'clock in the morning, about 4 or 5 nights in a row, right? And even last night was an early night, 1:15 midnight. And I get used to it. But the thing is,
what time did you get
I've
up?
been On Sunday morning, 11:15.
Ooh.
Can you believe it?
What about the week?
It's outrageous. Oh no, weekdays are fine. I was up at 7:30 this morning. It was not too bad. I've just got to rein it in. It's just I'm working, on certain things late at night, and I just get carried away, and then I get buried or something. I don't know. I mean, I'm enjoying stuff, but it's my sleep cycles have slightly got out of kilter. I think as you get ancient, I mean, I'm not ancient yet, but I believe you only need about 5 minutes of sleep a day, don't you, when you get past 80, something like that.
I don't know.
This is not strictly true.
Than that. I was reading about an experiment the other day where literally there was a guy, I think it was Harvard University, who challenged himself to stay awake, and he stayed awake for something like 200 hours.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
that's impressive.
Absolutely insane. But what happened was he was actually sleeping while he was awake, so his mind wasn't conscious. He was completely asleep. He had hallucinations. He started getting paranoid, and literally, eventually, when they said, "Look, you've got to go to sleep," so he thought the researchers were plotting against him. And all sorts and this was his own experiment.
They probably were if he was keeping them up.
Well, no, it was his own experiment. It was the researchers that he chose, but it was the paranoia and everything. And I think he went to bed, slept something like 12 hours, and then was fine. But when they were sort of measuring his brain activity while he was going through this, they literally found that he was asleep. So he was operating on subconscious. He didn't have a clue what he was doing, which was kind of scary. So what they actually said was, your body can actually do without sleep, but it's your brain that needs the sleep in order to build that barrier between reality and illusion, and reality and fantasy, like dreaming. So he was effectively sort of like living his dream, But anyway, kind of going a little bit off topic of finance there, but I just thought it was a bit interesting.
I don't know. I mean, there's two meanings, isn't there, with sleep? One of them is very common now, because we talk about people being awake or woke, all of these things. And your body obviously needs it. And I guess it's not the sort of thing we think about a lot, but it's probably quite magical, is sleep. I mean, there's certainly lots of things going on. I know your body has to recharge and do a cleanse, and of course it's getting rid of a lot of guff and doing all that kind of stuff overnight, unbeknownst to us, the sleepers. They haven't a clue what's going on. Well, why is he doing all this stuff?
When they measured his body and his brain, they actually found that it's sleep that prevents cortisol from flooding into the brain. So because he was tired, he was stressed. And that stress allowed cortisol to flood into the brain. And it was the cortisol that was then blocking the hippocampus from functioning. And it's hippocampus that deals with logic, reasoning, rationale, visual spatial memory, assessment, judgment, sympathy, empathy, everything that makes us human. So when that was blocked, it was literally his amygdala, operating on sort of fight, flight, freeze, which is why he was thinking that the researchers were plotting against him, and all this kind of stuff. So it was the lack of sleep that was causing the cortisol that was basically making him deluded. Because he could. Yeah,
I mean, I'm into it. Don't get me wrong. I do like sleep. When you sometimes, I know we're talking about sleep. We'll move on, won't we? But I was just going to say, sometimes you wake up a little bit too early, and then you sort of fall back asleep, and it's like the best sort of hour or something that you ever had. And you sort of sometimes, I mean, I haven't had that for a long time. I know when you're a teenager and you basically don't want to get out of bed because your bones are literally growing a millimeter an hour or something like that, and you're just exhausted. All you want to do is eat food and then fall asleep and all that kind of stuff, which is a lot of fun, even though you don't know what's going on. But when you used to have these sort of sleeps that were just almost perfect, and I've been having a few of those recently, so it's all quite good. I don't mind. But I think we talk about people being asleep at the wheel. I think that's pretty true of all of us, or certainly society as a whole, with of course a few individual standouts, but generally, and staying awake on things, and the fact that we get hypnotized, which we do. Well, I mean, the whole thing about being hypnotized by stuff is quite a big topic.
Yeah. Well, just reverting this back to money and what these what this evil cabal are doing against us. So they actually get off on torturing people, on tormenting people. They believe that their gods are harvesting loose energy, which is a negative energy from our souls. So what they do, they want to place us in a state of stress that sort of like adrenalizes the blood and all this kind of stuff. And the way you do that just over time is by introducing a toxic economy. By introducing taxes, fines, forfeitures, making people get less and less and less and pay more and more and more, putting them in a constant state of stress until they literally won't be able to think straight and won't be able to function. And when you can't think straight and you can't function, you can't figure out what's going on or who's doing what. So it's the economic environment that we're in is purposely stressful, whereas we shouldn't be living in this era of economic stress. Certainly not in this modern day and age.
No, we shouldn't. I think the older you get, the further away you are from that magical period called childhood where you didn't have stress. That's why it's magic. You don't really have it. I mean, you have things like, I want a bigger ice cream. That's not really stress. That's just sort of, pandering for your sweet tooth or whatever it might be and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have it like when you become supposedly a grown-up. And a grown-up basically means sort of like an institutionalized slave. And it's tricky. It's really tricky because we do have responsibilities and we do want to do our duty by our families and we want to get things done. But the system within which you have to perform has been purposely designed by others for their benefit at our expense. And we were never asked in at the planning meeting. And that's always been my view ever since I was a teenager. I'm going, why have I got to? No one asked me. I'm not. If I'm not at the meeting, I'm not in. I'm not playing your game, right? It's yours. You're welcome to it, but I don't want to play in it. Of course, you're compelled to because of all the constraints of laws and legalities or whatever we want to call all these things that sort of bear down upon you. But the whole history is that the financial system, for want of a better phrase, this aberrated system, is another expression of the way that a parasite operates. And it's the most powerful tool that they have, without a doubt, because it's very subtle. And as John Maynard Keynes, that powerful economic faggot, said, not one man in a million will work it out. And it's kind of true because, coming back to sleep, people go asleep on this because it's, I think maybe in part, it's a painful thing to take a look at. I think I mentioned it here before. You start talking. Yeah, it is, but it's also painful if you even just bring it up. You're like, don't talk about money. Why? Because most people's experience really is, I've never had enough. There's always too much bills at the end of the month and never enough money. And you never get to that sense of sort of warm buoyancy about things where you go, I'm actually sort of debt-free. And it's the debt, of course, that basically enslaves you. It is. Or excessive debt. I mean, I think, in any circumstance, it might be very valuable at times for you to go into debt if you're going to use what you are about to borrow off another party for productive means. That's one of the things that Belloc talked about. Hilaire Belloc, he wrote a book called The Economics for Helen and several others. And he has a definition of usury. It's not quite mine, but it's very interesting. It's thought-provoking. And what he says is, what is usury? He says it's any money lent for an unproductive purpose. Now, there's an essence of sense in that. In other words, you might, if you actually look at it's the interest rates on the money. Not only do they make it up out of thin air, but they also, on the currency. It's not only do they make it up out of thin air as a ledger entry, but you are then paying interest on it. And as we've said, when you were saying there earlier about putting everybody into competition with one another, that's effectively what the loan market does. Because interest exists on loans and they don't create the interest amount at the point of the loan, there's a shortage. In other words, they've got a greater demand upon the entire money pool than exists. Compelling, and they therefore induce further borrowers to come through the door to boost it up. And it's literally a pyramid scam. You have to keep funneling it in with new suckers called human beings to come in and borrow money to pay off the other human beings or to get the loans paid back. And this is why you've got that bizarre situation that when they have a productive economy, I don't know what that looks like, really. Let's suppose you had one. There have been periods when it's occurred. So when you've got a productive economy and there is a surplus, let's use that word, of money around, or currency in this case, because that's what we're compelled to use, the debts get paid off. And as they get paid off, they extinguish and reduce the supply of money, plunging you into a crisis. So the whole purpose of a bank, or one of them, is to keep the vast majority of its account holders permanently, inexorably in debt forever, and to increase that. Because if they don't do it, the bank dies. It literally can only operate by running on the bones of its account holders. And it's literally designed to, from an engineering point of view, you go, well, this can't work. Well, it can if they've got the law, supposedly, this thing called the law, on their side, to compel individuals into situations which are fundamentally immoral, unethical, and wrong. And that's what everybody feels. And it's so subtle now. It's very, very subtle. And people get giddy, don't they? They say, oh, the interest rates are going down. No one says, why do we even have interest rates in the first place?
Yeah,
it's
exactly,
that.
yeah.
It's the engineering question at the beginning that's missing out. It's like, oh, great, it's not going to be as shit as it used to be. No, but it's still going to be shit, mate.
Well,
and
the
it's still
interest rates
wrong.
might be going down, but inflation is going up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and talking about wealth.
But isn't that? Don't you think that's bizarre that an economic boom precipitates banking ruin? Because it does. Because of the nature of the way that they do
They don't want
things.
to borrow, yeah. And it's interesting that the bank has managed to sort of worm its way into a position. And again, I mean, this is where they need everybody in their network to be complicit. So they will say, right, well, so we're going to put you in positions of government here. We're going to make sure you get into these positions of power. And then we, as a bank, are going to lend to you in the form of treasury notes or treasury bills. And then in order to pay those treasury bills back, you're going to sell bonds to the public. And the public are going to pay for those bonds in currency, which they also got from us, which we lent to them. So we're lending you treasury bills and we're lending them currency, and they're going to swap the currency for those bonds that you sell so that then you can use their own currency in the economy and spend it, because you can't spend the treasury bills, but you still owe us those treasury bills back with the value in currency that you get from the bondholders. And the bondholders, therefore, don't mind taxes being increased by the taxpayer, because they feel as though they need their bonds paid back. So therefore, they're not going to complain about the taxes being increased. And this actually works very similar in the way that they've set up the central bank, so that the retail banks all profit when the central bank prints currency for itself, because they're all shareholders in it. So they don't mind the central bank printing currency from nothing and making profits for itself, because they benefit from that inflation, because they're shareholders, and then retail investors can then purchase shares in retail banks, and so they're not going to complain either. So they're literally playing everyone off against each other. It's outrageous.
It's all honourable, Gary, and above board. I'm a banker. You can trust me. We're an honest bunch. Honest.
Well, do you know what I saw today? I saw a video on they called it one of the greatest gold heists in history, about how they heisted all the gold from Fort Knox. Fort Knox hasn't got any gold in there. It's all gone to this small group of elites who managed to sort of worm their way into control of the government and the central banks and all that. And now they found that all the gold is gone. And they can't even audit it because they know it's not there.
I know. It's fun, isn't it?
And all these, basically, it was the Rockefellers that have done it. David Rockefeller, and they go to these banquets in their suits with gold plates and silver service and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, all these little people think, oh, they must know what they're doing. They're the titans of finance and all that kind of stuff. They're crooks who just simply like the finer things in life. That is it. And like to elevate
they're very skillful crooks, because,
they are.
Going back to this sleep thing, they operate on a psychological sort of control methodology. And it's very old. I mean, it's an induction into things. We were talking about something the other night about Jewish merchants in Russia and places like that, where they used to get the kulaks drunk. And the mechanism is exactly the same as with banking. It's no different, right? It's exactly the same. They'd rock up in a village. They'd open a liquor store. And these guys worked on the land. They didn't even drink. I know this sounds bizarre, but they didn't sit around drinking all day. They had work to do. So they start drinking at the liquor store and they give them free booze for 6 months. Just like internet, right? Give them that. And then they have to borrow money to buy a bit and it's off. And that's it. And once you've got an addiction going, or you've created demand for something that didn't exist, and the way you can do that is by bringing your horde from another country and then funding it as a sort of demoralization process, you get the whole town. And there are examples of merchants like that going into villages and literally within inside 5 years running the entire village. Whoa. The whole thing. Whoa. And that's exactly what's happened here. They run every account holder because it's the same mechanism at play. So, these old stories from 2,000 years ago, they're relevant if you look at the fundamental principles that are inherent in the story, not the form of them, but the essence of them. Nothing's really changed under the sun. And that's why it's dangerous for us as a people to have other people around, because generally we're more, how can I put it, optimistic in a naive sort of way. We want to build and do stuff. And someone goes, we'll take advantage of that. It's a bit like worker bees. They go, all right, we'll let them work away, but we'll just nick all the honey. I mean, that's what we do to bees, right? We don't take it all because we know that the bees need some of it. And we've helped the bees to be more productive. And you could say that they've done the same to us. I don't know whether this is a model up and down the line of nature. Maybe it is. And of course, it's a bit of a sort of grim realization for us as a culture, Christendom, whatever word you want to come to that understanding and go, bloody hell, we're being played here, mate. I go, yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why talking about money is also painful. Although many people don't know some of these details that we're discussing here, I think a subconscious part of them senses it. And it's a stressful subject to talk about. So you've now got an entire culture where people have worked for years in offices, then they go and get hammered on a Friday evening to forget it all, right? They go through the weekend, they're up at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock to get in the office by 8:30 and 9, and they're off again. Now, I know that this is receding because they're trying to keep all the hamsters in cages at home now and make everybody a home worker, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I actually think it's better in many ways. So, but that's just me. It's each to their own. There's a lot to be said.
If they do that, it's because they're trying to increase diversity in the workplace. So if the workplace is at home, they can't see what's going on.
Well, I remember when I first started working, the most important thing, the thing I used to think about all the time was, why is this not more diverse? I never stopped thinking about that, Gary. Like I never thought of that. Like no one ever thinks that. Like it's the most insane proposition.
It is.
It's just, it is. But you know what? It's drip, drip, drip.
It is, and
it's
a lot
just
of people can't see it.
Yep.
And as they say, united we stand, divided we fall. But so in order to create division, you must first encourage diversity, and that's why we hear so much. Diversity is our strength. What an absolute load of codswallop, mate! Utterly disgusting.
Well, it is in essence. But I think when they say it, let's suppose Tony Blair said it, it's true. Because the hour in that sentence, when he says it, refers to him and his crew of malingerers. Diversity is the parasitical ruler's strength. Now, I agree with you, Tony, but I'm not. You don't include me in your hour because I'm not part of that. And it's like when they say we are really improving, they mean themselves. They don't mean you. They never did. Yeah. So, and the crowd go, oh, it's going to be great and all that kind of stuff. Like with these elections that have just happened the last few days, and you look at this and you think, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Something's going to happen, but should I lay too much importance on it? I don't think so. There have been all these sorts of events. They roll around all the bloody time. And in the end, what they say, it doesn't matter who you vote for. The problem is the government always gets in because it never leaves because it's always there. It's these forces that we're talking about right now. Which one? Well, we'll have a red party for a bit, then we'll have a blue one. We might even have heaven help us, a green one. Right?
Whoa,
okay.
Yeah.
But... the fracturing of British politics is really quite interesting. I mean, I was looking at some of the results, not because I'm we're all affected by politics, whether we like it or not, because, you've got these Muppets in charge, all of them practically, and there's only a few, like maybe 1 out of every 300 has got any brains, but they're going to affect what we're doing. But it reminds me very much of Germany in the interwar years. I mean, in the Weimar Republic, 1920s through to the early 30s, they had a government every 6 months. Every 6 bloody months. Yeah, it just changed and changed and changed. The whole thing was coming apart at the seams. This is a sign of it. When you've got this fracturing, there's no more... In other words, the people at the periphery are suddenly getting listeners because people that were in the centre are going, hey, this party that I've been supporting all my life like an unconscious muppet, like a sheep, I've just realised that they're really bad. And so they're starting to go all over the place. You're getting all of... And this is why all these political pundits get panicky, don't they? They go... Oh, well, Rupert Lowe shouldn't set up Restore because it'll take the vote away from Nigel Farage, like I give a monkeys, right? So, because Farage in his garage ain't going to do note. Nothing.
Ah, yeah, so you think Farage has just become the uniparty again?
Yep.
Yeah,
he's a city boy.
I'd agree.
Anybody that's up there and can do things, I think Lowe's different. I'm quite happy to be proven wrong down the line. At the moment, I think it is. And it's whether, I think the question is, even if you were to find, let's suppose that Restore is that group of people, and I like many of the things that they say. I like many of the things that you say and that I say, and that people, I like many of these things. But if they're going to take a step towards acquiring what we call power, and of course their hands are completely tied by the financial currency system, right? They are. And they're going to have to... Anybody that wants to sort this country out has got to deal with that, and no one's found a way in 300 years. Because...
Well, this is where my information comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's the
It's
only
where
way
this stuff...
to deal with it. And, all legal and political influence stem from economic power. And just to give you an idea, so I actually went to a meeting this Saturday with the political...
Mark just chimed in, by the way. I just got a comment from Mark. Hi, Mark. He's listening. Yeah, he just said, Lowe's part of the establishment may well turn out to be true. Actually, Mark, I suspect they all are. May well... I sort of take the view, what's the least worst pony in the paddock that we should ride? If we're going to be put on one. I'll go that one for a bit. It's no good, I know, but all the others are worse. We just got to... I think maybe in part we've got to cut time and space for ourselves to restore the nation direct at source. It really is down to the hobbits. Only the hobbits can save the Shire. No one else is going to do it.
Well, again, it's also going to be people waking up. So I can tell you that I went to a meeting on Saturday with our preferred political party, one of those meetings. They were anticipating 100 people to show up.
Right.
300 people attended. 300. Right. So it literally quadruple what they were anticipating. It even caught the organisers by surprise. And there was an energy in the room there, and everyone could feel it. Everyone could feel it. And I've sort of like starting to find myself just naturally getting more involved because of the contacts that I've already made. And I've sort of tried getting in with these other political parties, and sometimes you just have to go where the energy flows. Like the universe will roll out the red carpet for you when it wants to. It's like, look, this is where you're meant to be. This is where we want you to go. So you're sort of like, wandering around, going like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And then suddenly, the door will open. Oh, right, okay, right, I'll go through this one. It's literally just waiting for the universe to give you a signal and being more open to it. That's what I found anyway. I mean, being open to the
I think you're right.
Is what got me here. And now we're doing this show on Food for Thought Radio. Check it out.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I think also, when I was younger, I used to think, right, this is it, but we do all this and this will sort it all out. As the years have gone by, it's not that those ideas are bad, and it's not that people are pulling in the right direction. It's just that there are always bumps on the road. And if you go out and sort of walk in your local high street or anywhere, or if you were in London, with 8 or 9 million people all popping around, you go, ooh, this is quite a big challenge. We're talking about something almost like we do need to be wizards. We do. You need certain occult powers. I simply mean hidden powers that are not normally perceived by the average fella in the street who's not been given much of an opportunity to even bump into them. But we need a fine-tuned sort of understanding of things. The whole of the political arena, of course, sucks. Everybody knows it, yet it exists. And just you and me sort of observing that and making criticisms about it won't change it at all, unfortunately. Oh, those lads, they really know what they're talking about. We'll stop all this. That's not going to happen. Because they're on a momentum trail, aren't they? And they get paid. That's the key thing. They're all getting paid at the end of the month. They're not going to give that up.
Well, so what this lot do also is that they encourage the possession and ownership of material things. They're like, oh, I've got this, I've got that, I've got all these resources, I'm so brilliant, you should listen to me. But I've got a quote here from I think it's pronounced Ellipticus, who I think it was like 50 AD was when he was born. He was a Greek philosopher, Stoic philosopher, and he said here, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. And I thought, actually, that's quite good, because I don't have many wants, but I tell you what I do want. I want a strong economy, and I want my country back. That's literally all I want. That's all I want. I don't.
That's what everybody wants. It's a big sentence. What you just said, though, Gary. It's a big sentence. It's massive. It includes everything. I know. You can feel it. It's a feeling, and it has. This is why myths and stories are so powerful, because if you have to make a kind of highly detailed, logical pitch to people with all the details of the stuff, it just doesn't carry. I wish it did, but it doesn't. Facts don't do it. Emotions do. And if the emotions are tuned right and you're stood in a group, just like you're mentioning about this meeting, that's the bit that you've remembered more than anything else. You remembered that feeling, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that, it's a bit like we were talking about perfume the other night. I know this seems a bit odd, but olfactory memory, the memory of smells, don't you think that they're most incredibly overpowering and instantaneous? You smell sort of like, maybe you had a girlfriend or something, or maybe you didn't, whatever. You have a girlfriend who wore a particular sort of perfume, you smell it 20 years later, you go, oh, bloody hell. And it's just like a movie switches on in your head, isn't it? You can't even stop it. It's really strong and powerful, all these sorts of things. And I think it's the same with feelings. So people go, oh, feelings are not important. They are. We want to feel good because you feel alive and you actually operate in a more intelligent way. So,
also,
all those...
intelligence comes with knowing what you want. Because there's another quote here that says, you become what you give your attention to. If you yourself don't choose what your thoughts and images you expose yourself to, someone else will. And their motives may not be the highest. So
absolutely. I think I read that only a few weeks. That's just spot on. I was saying yesterday, you know how we're told that we live in the attention economy?
Yes.
And I've been paying a lot of attention to the word attention and what it is. And what is it that I'm giving my attention to? And if you look at sort of, say, the TV consumer or whatever, their attention is basically hijacked of an evening. I mean, they get to choose certain things, but your attention is continually getting hijacked. TV advertising is just repetitive. It's that little drip, drip, drip. 3 years go by and everybody's buying McDonald's cheeseburgers or whatever. I don't know, but it works.
Mainstream media anymore, mate. I just
can't. I don't watch it.
It makes my head.
I don't. I just put YouTube videos on to learn stuff.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
all I do.
Me too. That's exactly what I do. I can't even listen to music in the car. I literally have to turn that shit off. I can't listen to it anymore. Like my brain has to be occupied, and I'm always thinking. And because if you can actually stimulate your hippocampus with creativity and initiative, that will eventually that prolonged stimulation will then lead on to stimulation of the pineal gland, which will then allow intuition to flow, where you're just like looking at the universe. The universe knows you've got a problem. The universe is there to help, and you need to sort of like tap into that. And that's when you get all these inspirational ideas. All right, I can do this, I can do that. And I tell you who this lot are absolutely, totally afraid of, that they will not go against. They will not go against what they describe as the prime creator. Because Rockefeller said in his secret covenant, for if they see what we have done, the veil will fall, and the prime creator will release his wrath upon us, and we will be, sent down into the depth from whence we came. So they know that there's a prime creator. This is why they have to get your consent. This is why they always say, the devil wants to contract with you. In fact, he doesn't even want to contract with you. All he wants to do is communicate with you. And once he communicates with you, that's joinder. He will just deceive you from then on. That's what these people do. So they do have some kind of codes. That's why they will not talk to you unless you take on your identity of your straw man. Are you Mr. So-and-so? I can't deal with you. And their entire system is predicated on this corporate fiction that they've created that we don't know about. That is what we have to get rid of, and that's what people need to know about. So when I was talking to these sort of youngsters at these meeting, again, they've not the foggiest about law on what their rights are. In fact, I was having a chat with one of the guys that were there, a fairly young chap, and I was telling him, look, this is how you get freedom. You know, if there's no victim, there's no crime. If there's no claimant, there's no claim. If there's no contract, there's no obligation. That is the foundation, you know, of our constitution. And he was like, yeah, but what if I do this? What if I do that? What if I take that of you? I'm like, well, is there a contract? Have you caused any harm, injury, or loss? You know, what were your intentions? Oh, well, yeah, it might be implied. And I literally said to him, I was like, mate, are you literally trying to entrap yourself? Like, I'm giving you the keys to your freedom here, like trying to get you out of this cell, and you're like throwing them back. You know? Yeah. And I was just like, I actually got quite shocked at that, because I was just like, whoa, this is brainwashing. This is conditioning. And he's like, oh, well, what about this? Well, I might have committed an offense. I was like, well, that's the deception. That anybody that accuses you of committing an offense, that's the deception. Because with the deception, there is no harm, injury, or loss caused. You know, there is also no claimant. You know, there is also no contract. Oh, you've committed an offence. Well, who's making the claim? Who's making that statement against me? You need to give me your name. You know, and you're saying that I've committed an offence. Well, tell me, what harm, injury, or loss have I caused? You know. Yep. So that anybody, and again, this is why we need law and backed up by political will, because the law is impotent without political will. And political will is ineffective without economic power. And economic power needs the law in order to be sustained. So it's all those three things that people need to be aware of. You know, and I think a lot of these politicians, obviously they've spent all their lives being politicians, and Rupert Lowe's being a successful businessman and all that. I don't think he knows about the law. Certainly not to the extent that that we do on this show. And also I think he doesn't know about the money. He doesn't know how the banking system works. Because he's in their system with a bank account, just like everybody else.
Well, I think if Keynes was right when he said that 1 man in a million will know, I think amongst the political class it's like 1 in 10 million. They're so dependent upon it, it's almost like they don't want to know. I mean, look, that's an exaggeration, but I'm just doing it for effect. But generally, even if they know, what's the point of them knowing if they're not going to communicate that knowledge? And they don't.
Well, check this out.
They don't.
So talking about knowledge, I've got another quote here from the same guy. He said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And that's the problem with these politicians. In fact, when I went to this meeting on Saturday, there was one of the guys who, I've seen, fighting the fight and all this kind of stuff. And I was actually really pleased to see him. I was like, oh, mate, you're doing a really good job. But I said, look, we need to have a chat earlier. I said, look, my background is, sort of finance and economics and blah. And immediately he came forward with, oh, I've read von Mises and blah, 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 blah. And literally dismissed me. And because I know what he's done, I still think he's a good guy. But if I hadn't known about his history and what he's done in the past, I would think you're a dick. He literally treated me like an absolute dick, and it was because it's impossible for him to learn what he thinks he already knows. So
what was the thing? Was it Goethe? None are more foolishly enslaved than those who believe themselves to be free. And it's a challenge, by the way, that we all face every day. You will go, it's non-stop, it never ends. You go, oh, hang on, I just sloped off on that one. That's right, like when you're doing something and you do a sort of dumb thing, and hopefully the idea is to do less and less dumb things the older you get. It doesn't always work out that way, of course. Sometimes you go, bloody hell, and you're sort of appalled at your own idiocy. If you're awake, you go, oh, you fool, because you're sort of scoping things and you miss a thing. I don't know about you. I'm often doing these tasks, and there's one little bit in the chain that I miss, and it all caught, and I go, well, I'm just, oh, you fool, it was right there in front of you. That kind of stuff. So the Stoic stuff is just brilliantly useful because it's pragmatic and it's real and it's grounded, and it's about, I think, how we operate down here. It also addresses things beyond this life, which is fantastic. But You know, it's the basics down here that we've got to sort out first. We'll worry about putting the big buildings up. Let's just get the foundations sorted out. And right now they're rotten. They're absolutely rotten, and people don't know it. They don't know how rotten they really are. Going back to that. Sorry.
Yeah, just check this out quickly. When he said about older people becoming wiser, well, again, this same guy, Elliptica, said here, appearances to the mind are of 4 kinds. Things either are what they appear to be, or they are, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are and do not appear to be, or they are not and yet appear to be. Rightly to aim in all these cases is the wise man's task.
Yeah, I think Ed Griffin used to read that out. He'd be fun at parties, that philosopher, wouldn't he? Say that again, mate.
Here we go. So he said appearances to the mind are of 4 kinds. So there's 4 of these scenarios. First one, things either are what they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be. So they either are what they are, or they're not what they're not. Or they are and do not appear to be. So they are correct, but they don't appear to be. Or they are not and yet appear to be. So there's 4 things. They're either right and give the impression that they're right. They're either wrong and give the impression that they're wrong. Or they're right and give the impression that they're wrong. Or they're wrong and they give the impression that they're right. So it's one. That's it. But he said it's rightly to aim in all these cases is the wise man's task, which is what you've just said. You know, and it's going to take it's going to take older and wiser people, but it's going to take the energy of the younger crowd. So in other words, it's going to be up to the older generation to talk and inspire the young people to get it into action, to give them the education that they need. And that's why this lot took over the education system.
It is. And it's also one of the reasons why they've fractured that cohesion in the family unit. And by the family unit, I mean the extension to grandma and grandpa and great-grandma and great-grandpa, if you were fortunate. Some people are fortunate to have them around in their early years. So you've got that line. And it's this thing about teaching children to respect their elders up to a point, right?
Well, the things that elders they're all technophobes these days, aren't they? You know, kids are just like, will you play with me? It's not a case of like playing outside and having lots of different ideas anymore. Kids are on their computers and their grandparents are just sort of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. That's what I found. Like grandparents are into sort of baking. You know, well, particularly, you know, my nieces and nephews with their grandparents now. Yeah, their grandparents are into baking and a little bit of gardening, and they're not down with the kids anymore. You know, there's a generational divide, and because the kids are on these computer games, and these computer games have got explosions going off and things racing one another and flashing lights and, you know, things speeding across the screen and stuff, grandparents can't compete. And kids aren't interested because grandparents are boring and slow and old and fuddy.
I still don't. I don't get video games. Look, I know I'm an old fart. Back in the pubs in the 70s, they introduced Space Invaders and Defender, these big slot machine things, right? Yeah. And I had a couple of mates who were just shoveling their weekly wage packet into playing these things. I went, look, what are you doing? And, you know, they're clicking this button like mad, and it just looked the saddest lot of crap to me ever. And it still does. When you see them at these... look, I know that they've got these high-speed synaptic responses and all this kind of stuff. So what? It's daft. It's just impractically daft to me. I mean, I just don't get it. So I really am an old fart. Or let's play... I remember... When was it? About 1990.
You can't be that much of a fart. You set up FFT radio.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm into tech to serve people, but not to sort of ponce about in games. And yet, you know, that said, if you could get into the gaming community, there's so many of them, you want to get BSV as a currency into the gaming community, well, that would help. I just use them.
This is what is going to happen. Everything is going to be micropayments in the future. They're going to be winning electronic cash. You know? And again, so what you can do is you can actually have... so people can pay to play, and there's a payout if they beat the highest score. So it's going to be in their interest to actually pay to play, and then if they beat the highest score, they get a payout.
Yep.
It's a great way of... I've seen some of the games that have been played like that, and it's just like, wow, BSV fits in everything, mate. It is going to be huge. And we've
It's
already
branding.
seen, they're
It's
all
branding. It's about
influencers.
branding. People buy brands because brands hypnotize. They do. I mean, so the label does it. People have an experience about a label, don't they? They have an experience because of certain things. You know, all these really fantastic brochures that get published because they're by Rolls-Royce or whatever, because they've got a heritage of doing good stuff. And actually, in this case, they do, really. But that's the thing. The branding convinces the mind. Oh, I'm dealing with something solid and real. In most cases, this is true. You know, there have been lots of sort of standards and regulatory bodies to ensure that you're getting something decent. But the whole thing about looking at the content of it has gone sort of out of the window, I think. You know, people understand that they buy a brand. They don't know what's actually in the jar if you're thinking about food. Have you read the ingredients in here? This has got methobisulfate sodium or whatever the hell it is. You know, is that any good for me? Oh, it must be all right because this company's trustworthy. I don't think so.
Yeah,
and all of...
BSV is a commodity. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not actually a brand. People think it's a brand issue at the moment, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Once utility comes on the network, mate, and people see that there's nothing that can compete with it, that's
Yeah.
it. Game over. We are just waiting
Well,
for that.
I'm completely with you. I guess the questions that pop up are, I mean, I tend to, this is me being slightly negative, but not really. It's just sort of a historical precedent. I'm not really being negative. I'm just sort of thinking about something. You know, videotapes, you know, the classic videotape wars.
Oh, you're not gonna
Maybe
talk
you
about
don't. But
VHS and Betamax, are you?
yeah. I'm well, very briefly.
I know.
It's just that Betamax was better, right? Everybody said it's better, and VHS won out. Why? Well, I think this is a different circumstance, by the way, with BSV because of the inherent long-term utility in it. Yeah, I think it's different. But nevertheless, for a long period of time, well, it was permanent until they came out with DVDs and all the other thing a little bit later on. But VHS sort of mopped up, and it was just to do with perception or doing certain industry deals so that you capture such a huge chunk of market by sort of doing a deal with company ABC Limited or whatever the hell it is, that everybody goes, well, all my mates are using it, so I'm going to use it. And that's herd power is considerable. And of course, they use their control of the mainstream media to create herds and to manage herds in the directions they want. All of it, of course, in the sake of progress, mate. This is all going to improve things. It's a very dangerous word, progress. It's progress for them. It ain't for us. It never has been.
But the thing is, though, this is what you have to remember. Data can only be commoditized one way. So in other words, there is only one digital network that can actually keep your data secure. That's literally it. So when people actually figure this out, because this is a completely new concept. Literally, this has never been introduced in history before. Of actually a way to commoditize data, which means your data is yours. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It can't be corrupted. It can't be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted. And it's not susceptible to cybersecurity hacks or virus software. There is only one network that can do that. That's it. And that's what people haven't realized yet. But when not only will people realize this when utility comes on the network, they're suddenly going to realize, oh, right, so this is actually the only network that I can actually store my digital data on where it's actually secure. Yeah. And that's what they don't realize. They think that it's just like, speculative number go up at the moment, sort of gambling, for fiat dollar. They're all looking at the fiat dollar signs going up. They don't realize what it can be used for, but that's because the utility hasn't been demonstrated yet. And this is what the cabal are desperate to hide. And this is why they're speeding things up and making so many mistakes, because they know it's coming. And that's what my job is to sort of explain on this radio station.
What the farmers need to know is that we're coming with BSV up our backsides and like a rocket to get on with things. Yeah, really. I mean, it is. It's you realise, of course, it's like a communications horsepower war, and we're going to have to do things differently. But like I said before, we've never had more tools. Really, seriously, you look around, you go, is there a tool that I can do this? Yeah, there is. So it's, one of the things is for people to, as I say, get off their hairy backsides, their big fat asses, and just pick something up and start using it in a good cause and say, I'm doing this because I want my nation back. And you go, what? Just washing that car? Yeah, I'm doing it for one of our blokes, and this is what I do. And you carry it about with you like an energy, like a stamp, and it begins to rub off on others. It's... monkey see, monkey do. We just want monkeys to see good stuff and do good stuff, and we can do it. So we've never had more tools, and it is an intelligence and sort of information war to a great degree. People simply don't know that this topic, what we're talking about, really exists yet, not on a sufficiently large scale. That's it. They go, I don't know what you're talking about. Why? Because I've never even heard these sentences before. Oh yeah, and we're going, oh yeah, crap, this is true. So it's like branding. You go, yeah, it's almost like we just need a PR campaign. We exist. What are you? Don't matter. We exist, right?
We're here talking about it on Food for Thought Radio, and also
we're going in the right direction. We're doing the right thing, one step at a time.
The WTF festival is all over BSV. They know. The organisers of that know the truth, and like slowly, obviously got Mark the bowler hat farmer listening in. Gonna have Justin Rogers, the effing farmer, listening in. It's happening, and they've had audiences with Rupert Lowe. And again, like, it's just slowly they're sort of trying to look, because obviously I'm a nobody at the moment, and I'm going to stay that way because I can't, I can't, because otherwise they'll shut me down and probably shoot me. But eventually this is what we're working towards. It's
they won't.
Like,
they're not. There's going to be too many of us to shoot. If we can get, that's the thing.
Exactly.
Our safety gets. You go from being really small when you're vulnerable, and you've got to. That's the hardest bit. It's like pushing one of those big freight wagons. It takes 95% of your energy to move it an inch, but once it gets going, you don't let up because the other 5% will get it up to speed, and that's really what we're kind of talking about.
They'll
with all these
eventually
things.
come to us. Once we start talking and the message gets out and this thing starts pumping, they're gonna we don't know about this. Who do we need to speak to? Everybody's gonna.
We're going to be
like,
winners,
we
mate.
know.
We're going to be winning. Absolutely. Yeah. This hour gets faster. I think that was only about 25 minutes this week. It's a bloody joke.
It was great fun, mate. Great fun.
It was great. Have a cracking week, Gary. I look forward to the next one and probably a few communications in between. So that's brilliant.
You too, mate.
Coming up soon, Eric Von Essex is in about 4 or 5 minutes with Fockham Hall on Monday night. Just thought I'd get that in for him.